You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy this weekend, and of course, that is going to garner a lot of the attention, as it should. Jayden's future, however, is a huge part of that conversation. Out of college eligibility, he'll be headed to the NFL draft, and after this historic season, he is skyrocketing up draft boards, but this is by far, the highest I have seen Jayden on anybody's mock draft. Our buddy Chris Trapasso over at CBS Sports has Jayden Daniels going second overall to the New England Patriots. You can go see that mock draft at cbssports.com. Interestingly enough, also, he has Drake May going with the number 1 pick. And our friend Chris Trapasso, good enough to join us for a couple of minutes here. Chris, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be on to talk college football in the midst of such a fun NFL season. Just the more football that we have available to us to talk about this time of year is way better. So it's a really fun time to be a college football fan, a draft fan, and just all the chaos that's happening in the NFL.
No doubt, man. And there's a lot still to be said as far as the pecking order for the draft with all that chaos unfolding. But I got to know why you are as bullish right now on Jayden Daniels, as bullish as anybody that I've seen so far.
Okay, so it starts with talking to some people that I know around the league in the scouting world that kind of, and I felt this way too, October, November, when he was really starting to piece together some quality games. We all remember that he was a big recruit. He's not little. He's listed at 6'4", 210. He can certainly move around. He's a threat in the design run game as a scrambler. Kind of checked with some scouts that I know, and they said, yeah, he's a legit first-round player. Since that point, in October or November, he played even better and took his game to the next level, multiple games where he was the best player on the field in the SEC, which is a pretty noteworthy thing to do for a quarterback. Secondly, if we go back the last 5 to 7 years in the NFL draft, and if I were to have come on this show in any of those 5 to 7 years, there would be ultimately a quarterback who we weren't talking about who eventually went either number 1 or in the top 5 or top 2. You can go Baker Mayfield in 2018, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, to a certain degree, Kyler Murray in 2019. Joe Burrow went from, hey, maybe he could get picked to maybe he's a day 2 pick to the consensus number 1 overall pick in a draft that college football season, your listeners know, it was all about Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow blew them out of the water. The last couple of years, we've seen the same thing where there's always at least 1, sometimes 2 quarterbacks who even September or October in that final year in college are not really on the first round and certainly not on the top 10 draft radar. Zach Wilson's another one. There's usually one of them, and I think Jayden Daniels fits the profile to be that guy, and it coincides with Caleb Williams kind of having a down season at USC.
So that was my next question. Why? The team results obviously weren't there for Caleb.
Sure.
Why? And in your mock draft, you have Drake May going number 1, and you have Caleb Williams dropping to the Bucs at number 6. Why the drop for Caleb Williams?
Well, what I saw on film this year is against pressure, he was just not anywhere close to the quarterback that he was, even in his first season at Oklahoma. Certainly not the type of calm, cool, and collected improviser that he was last season at USC. And I think that's a real problem because these teams realize to pick someone like a Zach Wilson or a Mitch Trubisky that have problems against pressure or didn't see a lot of pressure in college, they're going to be picked by one of the top 3 teams in the draft that don't necessarily have a great offensive line, that are not going to see wide open receivers on every single play and have a Lincoln Riley-esque offensive play designer. It's important to be very good under pressure, or at least show that, especially in that final season in college. I didn't see that from Caleb Williams. I was surprised at that because, again, he was good in 2022 when he was under duress, but a lot more interceptions, a lot more plays where he really held the ball for almost an excruciatingly long amount of time and made bad decisions, almost trusted his arm a little too much. That's not to say that I think he's a terrible prospect. He shouldn't go in the first round. But it does show, and it's kind of ironic with how this college football season played out, you ultimately have to play the games. And I think we were all a little bit too quick to anoint Caleb Williams and say, oh, my God, he is definitely the number one overall pick. No one can touch him. It was almost right at that point in September we started to see Drake May play better, and certainly Jayden Daniels then took off and ultimately had 50 touchdowns.
Chris Trapasso is with the CBS Sports. Got a mock draft up right now where Jayden Daniels going number 2 overall to the New England Patriots. If that's the case, then, Chris, do you see a scenario where Jayden Daniels could be the number 1 pick in the draft?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it may seem crazy now, but again, I've given those examples, and if you look back and think about them, there's, again, even beyond 2018, you can go 2016, 2017, 2015, there's always one guy that skyrockets. And I remember even 2018, my first year at CBS, no one, even after winning the Heisman, no one thought that Baker Mayfield was going to leapfrog Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen and Josh Allen. And he ultimately, by the day before the draft, it kind of leaked that the Browns were going to pick him number 1 overall. So I don't think that's crazy. And if you want to just talk about skill set and what Jayden Daniels can do, I mean, you watched it, your listeners watched everything that he did on the field this year. He fits the profile of a modern-day passer. There's so much about too high safety shells and teams on defense are trying to limit those explosive plays. With Jayden Daniels, his deep ball touch is as good as I've seen in the last 5 to 7 years at the quarterback spot. So he can hit those big plays even when teams are trying to stop it. And even if coverage is perfect, the pass rush is good, we know what he can do with his legs. Teams are looking for those two elements at the quarterback spot. And again, just a lot of experience. He was a big-time recruit. He's been in the limelight early in his career at Arizona State and certainly, passed all the tests that were put in front of him in the SEC the last 2 seasons at LSU.
Chris Trapasso, I got 2 more for you. One
Sure.
is you got Malik Nabers, number 7 to the Giants. Where would he have been before the season? Another way to ask it is, how much did he help himself with the season he had?
A lot. I mean, I think he still would have been a consensus first-round-ish guy, but so many of the big plays from this LSU offense were on throws from Jayden Daniels to Malik Nabers, and we saw he was able to stay healthy, how dynamic of a mover he is. I think with Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to be the first receiver off the board, you're almost in awe by his size and speed and the refinement to his game, catching the football in tight quarters. Nabers, it won't surprise anyone if he actually tests close to Marvin Harrison Jr., or maybe in some of, broad jump vertical is even more explosive. So Harrison gives you that complete wide receiver in that bigger frame, but Nabers is someone that has that yards after the catch ability to catch a bubble screen and take it 70 yards, or catch a shallow cross on a 3rd and 5 and take it 15 yards to pick up those splash plays. He really helped himself to kind of solidify in what's kind of become a pretty good wide receiver class, the wide receiver 2, at least, again, based on who I've talked to and just my view, the number 2 receiver in a pretty good wide receiver class.
And you got the Saints taking Brock Bowers at 9. Well, if the Saints are picking 9, then it's going to unravel here over the final month, which it very well could. I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. Why is Bowers a fit on a team that has so many needs?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. A lot of times when I've done these Saints mock drafts, and it still is, relatively early with the mock draft stuff, once we get into, obviously, like the NFL playoffs and the bowl games are done, Senior Bowl happens, things start to crystallize a little bit. But you're right that they do have so many needs. They could go defense again. I just think in watching a lot of the Saints games this season, like when I go back during the week and I'm watching film, especially with Rashid Shaheed being injured and obviously Michael Thomas it's like this is an offense that I think at times Derek Carr is kind of hamstrung because outside of Chris Olave, he doesn't have a lot of options in the pass game. So I think, they picked Chris Olave last year in the first round. He's been a great return on investment early on. To bring in another top-tier pass catcher who's a good blocker, can really do everything. I think to be a top 15 tight end, you have to be a totally well-rounded player. We certainly have seen that in the SEC the last couple seasons that Brock Bowers is exactly that. It might seem like a luxury pick, but again, I think it's more about maximizing your investment in Derek Carr to just get him another weapon over the middle.
He is Chris Trapasso, CBSSports.com, on Twitter at Chris Trapasso. Give him a follow. No doubt a guy we're going to bother a lot between now and the draft. We appreciate you as always, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.